All right, we're back with the next video. I've lost track of how many we're at right now. This could be number 5, number 6, I don't know. But there'll be many more. This is a big project. I do think, especially when we're done auth, like a lot of stuff's going to move pretty quickly. Like auth is complicated, as I think you can see, especially doing it correctly. Before we get into today's content, I want to remind you that I have set up a YouTube membership sort of program, like kind of like, I guess, the Patreon version of YouTube. And we got a few people there already. They have access to the source code as we go on this, which is really nice. I will be eventually probably open sourcing this fully, but it is one of the perks I'm leaving for these members. $3.99 a month. It's not, crazy and whatnot. Secondly, another perk is we have a Discord, and it's just kind of getting started up, but we got some people there and we're answering questions. I plan to do some mentoring on there, and as well as release some early access to some other sort of like quieter projects I'm working on. So definitely, if you're interested, come there. Otherwise, like just a subscribe, a share on something. If you have another dev friend that you think this series would be cool for, I'd appreciate it. So thank you for hanging out and watching, and let's get into it. So we just kind of wrapped up with the very basics of auth. We at least have, the ability in our UI to log in with a form, which is nice, and we have to redirect them somewhere. We could, of course, create a new screen, push them there using our navigator, that kind of thing. But I think this is a good time to actually get our router set up. Let's go into our pub spec. I want to remember, did we install it? We don't even have it yet. So we're going to go to terminal inside the Flutter directory and do flutter pub add, and we're going to use Go Router. Go Router is the router I like to use. In the past, I've used Auto Router, and I still have quite a few projects using Auto Router that are in production that I made a while ago. But Go Router I really, really like. Okay, so we now have Go Router installed. So we're going to set up our little routing system. Let's get that figured out. Where do we want to put this? I feel like this routing is kind of part of core. We could make another feature called like navigation, but I think we can just have it in core. Let's just put this in. We might move this around. I'm just putting it right in core. We're going to call it just approuter.dart. Okay, so for our app router, we are going to use, like I said, Go Router. Just for people that maybe aren't familiar with Go Router, let's just take a quick look. It's a cool routing package, and because we're building something that needs to work on web as well as native, we definitely want a proper router with permalinks and like where the URL actually changes in the address bar. And when you just use the built-in navigators to push things, you won't get that. So this package is really good, and it is, although it wasn't created by Google originally, as far as I know, it was kind of adopted into as like the official like routing package, which is why I started using it in my tutorials and in projects. So it allows us, if we look at the getting started, we essentially create a router. We can pass in different paths and then map it to a specific screen. We can do stuff where we can pass dynamic parameters in. There's stuff for redirection, et cetera, et cetera. That's all good. However, we're going to do this even a little bit more advanced in a sense where our router we're going to be able to access through our Serverpod providers. And that means that that's just a good thing to have because we might want to work with something in our provider to talk to our router and that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to first of all make the router, and we'll just use Go Router router. And the first parameter is going to be router ref. And this will make sense in a moment because we're going to use the Serverpod generator here. And in order to use our generator, like we've seen in, let's find like our auth provider, we also need to make it part so that another file is essentially part of this. And we just need to name this the same thing, approuter.dart, but we want to say .g.dart. It's going to be generated code. Okay, cool. So this doesn't exist yet. This will get generated when we actually create it. So this is not a notifier. Instead, this is, I don't even know what kind of provider this would be called. We'll find out when we actually generate it. So we'll have that. And what we want to actually return from this is a Go router, just like that. Our routes, we're going to eventually make some routes, and there'll be some other stuff we're going to do in here. But let's get this code generated so we can start working with it properly and not have these errors. So again, to generate, I have to remember how to do it, the command, but I don't really have to remember because I have this cool little package. This is an extension. It's called build runner, I believe. Let's make sure. If I go to my extensions and look for build, Dart build runner. If you install this, you don't have to remember the annoying command. So I can do one of two things. I can look for, so you'll get some options that aren't necessarily relevant, some of these like generated ones, but we want to look for the one that's the name of our project. We can just click play, which will essentially run the build, or we can do this one, which will watch. And let's do watch for now, just so we can see how it works. And this is essentially just running that command. It's the pub run build runner. Instead of build, it's watch, and then that delete conflicting outputs. So just a little bit easier. You'll see it opens up a separate terminal tab. So I need to remember to go back here if I want to do anything in my normal terminal, if I want to keep this running. So we have its success. Now we actually have something here. This is just the generated code, auto dispose provider ref. Okay, so this is just a provider, which is cool. Okay, so what do we want in here? Well, we need some routes. Let's make some screens, I guess. Well, we already have one screen. Let's have our login screen as a route. So to do this, we're going to go route and its path. Let's make it, we could just make it /login, for example, and I believe we want it with a /. And then inside here, we need to have a builder. And this is, we just go builder, and we pass in, the first is context, the second is state. And here, we can then make a reference to our login page, login screen, we called it, just like that. So context is just our, our normal build context in case we need to access it. State, we don't need to access it in this case, but state will include things like maybe the URL has some dynamic parameters. Like for instance, wouldn't really make sense for login, but for something like in our app, we're going to have something called venues, and then we might have like a venue ID in the URL, venue ID like that, and we're able to get access to what this actually, the real value is inside our state. And we'll definitely see that at some point. Okay, so now we have this set up, let's just make one more route called, this is just temporary. We'll just call it like success or something. And we're going to have a screen called success screen, which again doesn't exist yet. Let's just make it. This is just really to test out what we were working on last. We're going to detract that. So this, for now, we can put it in here, success screen.dart. And we'll just make it a stateless widget. Stateless widget, success screen, like so. And instead, we want to return a scaffold. And maybe it's body. We have a center and a child that says, welcome, welcome. Okay. And now we just got to import success screen. If I spell, oh, I didn't spell it right. Success screen. Okay, now we got it. All right, so we have sort of our router configured. Now that's not enough for this just to work. Like Flutter needs to know, it doesn't even know about this router. It's just a file we made. Okay, cool. So we'll go to our main.dart. And inside our material app here, we're just gonna get rid of everything. So we've kind of carried over the stuff we need, and we can remember how to do this stuff. So instead of material app, we're actually going to use material app.router, and that allows us to use a router. Inside here, we are going to do a couple more things. So we still have the same parameters as we do with the material app, but there's some extra stuff now. For instance, we have a route information provider, which is nice, and we have a few others. Now, what we need to do is actually get access to our router. So we can do that. We're in a consumer stateful widget, so we can actually go final router equals ref dot watch our router provider. And here, for our information provider, we access our router. So this is now just the Go router, and we do router dot, it would be route information provider. Similarly, we're going to have a router delegate, and that's just going to be router dot router delegate. And route, what's the one I'm missing? Route information parser, router.information parser. So it all kind of maps to those lovely things. All right, so now we will run this, and I'm just going to refresh, and we're probably going to have a major error, and it'll be super exciting. Yeah, so it says no routes for location slash. So we could, of course, make a page that's like our home page, but for now, we're actually just going to make it the login page, and we can override. Right now, the default is the /, but we can do initial location as /login. And now we should green arrow rebuild, and we should actually see this. So now we're here, and let's try signing in. Oh, we actually have to also update our login form because we just have this to do redirect. So in order to do this, good, we have access to context. So we can actually go context.push, and because we have Go router, you'll see this actually included Go router when I did the auto complete for push. It's something that gets added to context, and we can actually push a location. And in this case, let's do /success, and that just matches with our one right here. So let's try that. Tyler, it was Tyler 3. Welcome back. And for some reason, we didn't get the push there. That's interesting. Let's go to our terminal, or let's go to our debug console. Maybe there's an error. Context.push. Let's just see. Success. Yep. Oh, I put in the error. That's why. That doesn't make sense. So let's just try that again. And now we get to our welcome screen, and everything's great. We can still go back. We don't have an app bar, so you don't have that lovely back button, but we can drag to go back. We can also do context.replace, and possibly in this case, this might make more sense because we don't want people to really go back to the login screen. So basically replace whatever you're in with that. So let me just do a rebuild here. Oh, interesting. Oh, it's because now when we are coming, it's actually changing it to success. So we're getting login. And that's actually like, in some way, if this was an app that required login, this is actually working exactly as we would want. We come here, we see it, and we're kind of brought there, which is fine. And we could fix it up, but that's not really how I want this app to work. This app will be, you can use quite a bit of it without an account. But okay, so we got that working, which is cool. But there's some things we could make better. For instance, we have this word login here, we have login here, and we have login. Oh, not there, but we have success there. Like we're kind of like have these strings that are being passed around, and we could easily want to change one and forget to change it somewhere else, and things could be a problem. So what I like to do is on any of our screens, we are going to have a static string called route, and actually it's going to be a, I don't want to do this. Let me just remember how I do this. Yeah, I want to make it actually a function that is going to return whatever the route is. And in this case, it'll be login. Let's do the same for success. And of course, change it to say success. So with those in place now, save everything. Instead of this, we can actually go login screen.route like this. There's a reason I'm doing it as a function, and that will make sense in the future. But we can do that, and then we can also do success screen.route. So now we just have those things stored in one place, meaning over here, sorry, in our login form, instead of replacing this, we can actually go success screen.route. You'll notice I made it static, and that's so that we don't actually have to instantiate a success screen. It doesn't make sense to do that. We just want access to the class variable, which is what a static field is. Okay, so now we have that working, and maybe on our success screen, this is a good place for us to, let's wrap this in a column. Let us do a main axis size.min, and under here, let's make a logout button. So let's just do elevated button, on pressed, child text, logout, and now for this we need access to ref, and we don't actually have access to ref. So we have a couple options. We could change this to a consumer widget, which is what I'm going to do. Consumer widget, which means we have to now do this widget ref. Or we could have wrapped this in a consumer, which we've seen very early on in the series. And here now we can go ref.read auth provider dot notifier, .logout. Now doing this logout is not going to just automatically redirect people to the place we want to go. Oh, that's interesting. We got, there we go. So we got welcome back, cool. And if I click log out, we are going to be logged out, but it's not actually bringing us anywhere. And there are ways to do that if we want to bring people back to the login screen. However, in our app, we don't care about that because we're allowing people to stay logged out. So we're not going to worry about that. And the way you would deal with that, which is a very common thing, in our app router, we can actually, and I'll kind of quickly show how you could do this. App router has a redirect parameter that we can pass in, redirect, and takes context and state. And in here, we can get access to the user state, because remember, this is a provider, so we can actually go ref.watch, ref.read. What are we using? We're using the auth provider. And we can do something, let's just call this state or something, auth state, I guess, makes sense. Auth state. And we can do something like if auth state, if auth state is, this is another way we can do, that we were doing in our switch case, this is another way we can do this. And it would be auth state guest in our case. So if it is auth state guest, we can actually go and redirect back. And the way this redirect function works, it returns either string or null. And we want to return the route that we would bring them to. And in that case, we would use our login screen .route like this. Otherwise, at the very end, we return null. Now, there's another thing that is important to do here if you're trying to do this. We also want to make sure they're not already on the login screen, or you're just going to keep getting redirect. So the way I like to do it is I usually make something called like public routes. And there may be a better way to do this, to be honest, but this seems to work fine. Login screen.route. And we might have something like a register screen here, maybe like a term screen. I don't know, all the things you could see, while you're not logged out. And we can just basically go, if public routes dot contains, and here we pass in our matched location, and that we can get from state. So this is basically like the current route, state.matched location. You see it's a string. In the case that it contains one of those, we'll just return null right away and not actually do this logic here. Meaning, like, it's probably even more efficient to have this down here because we don't really access it until then. So that's one way to do it. Now, this won't work right out of the box, and it's because the redirect it's not something that's just always listening, always watching. We actually have to do something to make it work. So you'll see if I, although I have to log in, log out, I'll just show you what I mean. Tyler3 at I think that's my password. Nope. I think I mistyped it. There we go. If I click log out, I'm not actually going to be brought anywhere because this function, just isn't, it's not just running. So the way we can solve that, and we only have to do this in one spot, is in our main.dart, we need to essentially have a watcher of our auth. So we can do that just by going ref.listen. So we've done this before, and we want to use our auth provider. And in the listener, we'll have our previous state, next state. Really, we don't really have to check things here. We don't have to be like, is it logged in, is it whatever? But we want to do something. Anytime this fires, we just want to essentially refresh the router. And refreshing the router will rerun that redirect. So we can go router.refresh right here. So we just have this listening. We don't care what the state is. We're just going to, essentially invoke this function right here. As well as, I'm sure some other things are happening under the hood, but this is the way, at least a way to do it. So now, if I click log out, we do have an error here. Path utils field Okay, we'll figure out why that's happening. Let's just try it out again. I might have missed one thing, and I will very quickly try and make this work, but it's not really important to our app. Let's just go log out. Yeah, okay, we do have an issue here. What is this? Go router information provider yielded something. I must have forgot one thing. Give me a second. All right, off recording. I did fiddle with this a bit, trying to get working. I did notice that on my last project that I've used GoRouter, I was using version 13. There's now version 14, so maybe there's a breaking change. Again, this isn't really necessary for our app. This is the right approach. There's probably just some little thing missing or something weird going on. We may circle back on it at some point if there's parts of our app that require, login, which I'm sure there will be. In which case, hopefully we'll have the solution figured out by then. So I'm just going to remove that stuff. It wasn't really something we want, and we will continue on. What are you, 20 minutes in? Okay. So let's get rid of that. Let's go to our app router, and we'll get rid of our redirect stuff. Yeah, I will just, I'll keep the code here. There we go. We'll keep the code there. It'll be fine. Okay, and then let's see. I think we're good. Our app's still working. Our app is still working. Okay, let's just quickly make our login screen a little bit better. So we have our login screen now. Our login form, I did put this in a single child scroll view. I'm pretty sure we're never going to have someone's phone that is too small for that. So let's actually change this to a center, because then we'll get it nice and centered in the screen if we did this right. Our login form should have a column. Yeah, we need to do main axis size minimum, because it's basically trying to take up the whole amount of space. So centering something that's trying to take up as much space is not going to really center it. So there's something a little bit better there. We can also, so I want the form to be just the form. It has no container. It has, it's basically just the buttons and all that kind of stuff. But on the screen, we can decide to, decorate a little bit better. So maybe we're going to wrap this in a card. Again, I'm not spending too much time on UI right now. And then let's have some padding just around that, and probably padding around the card as well, just so it's not right against the edge. Cool. The colors probably don't come through very great on the screen. Also, the center is not really working for me, so let's just remove it. We'll just have it up there. Frankly, my plan for login in general is, although there will be a login screen just for people that come from a link, we want to have a screen they can do it on. Generally in the app, I want to make it so that login and registering is done through a bottom sheet modal. That way, if they're in the middle of something, they're not logged in, and there's basically a requirement for them to do it, they can log in or create their account. The modal can close and they can just continue on their way rather than redirecting them somewhere. So that's just a nice quality of life thing I want to do in general. Okay. While we're talking about routing, let's actually set up, the way our app's going to work. Because again, we're not going to have login right at the start. It's going to let you do things. So we're going to go back to our router, our app router, and we're still going to keep this login screen. I'm going to get rid of the success route. We'll still keep the screen for now so that things don't complain. But what we're actually going to set up is kind of our tabs now, because this app is going to have, if we go back to our Figma, hopefully I can get it easily. Just go to recent. There's probably some things in here that are not relevant. So hopefully I can find our lovely open mic app. Here we go. So if we refresh ourselves on this, we're essentially going to have a feed tab, an explore tab, a create tab, but it's not really going to be a tab. It's going to be, something that probably pops up from the bottom, events and profile. So very much, like an Instagram or whatever. So we're going to be creating things called shells. There'll be a shell for each of these. That way they can, in your app, you can go between one and go to the other, and it will remain in memory. It will keep the state. So say you're a few pages deep, you clicked on explore, now you've gone to the venue list, now you've gone to a particular venue or whatever. And then you decide to go to this tab and then come back. We don't want to reset it. You're going to stay there. And that's what these shells will allow us to do. So what we want to do is we actually have to kind of start to make some features here, just very empty and whatever, just to actually make this work. So inside our features, let's generate these. We're going to do this in a sort of fun way. So we're going to make a inside features. We're going to make a new folder. What do we have? We have feed. Feed, really the feature to me is going to be called post. It's, a post that you're making. So we're actually going to call it that. And by post, I mean literally a post to your Facebook page. Explore, although we're calling it explore here, it's really the model, and the feature itself is venue. Those will be the locations. Create, we're going to come back to. It's a little bit different. It's kind of a combination of these things. Events, that's the right name, event. I'm keeping all my model names, all my everything is singular, not plural. And profile. Profile is kind of part of user, so we already kind of have that. Okay, cool. So what I would like to do now is, so remember we have this kind of pattern that we like. So I'm going to essentially make that happen. Now, what we can do, just because I find it's a little bit easier, I mean, you could do this in Terminal, and I showed that already, but another fun trick, you can reveal in Finder. And, we can make our folders here. We can have, components, Command-Shift-N on Mac, screens, Command-Shift-N. What else do we have? Models, although, yeah, we'll still keep models, but we might be getting rid of that. We talked about before. Screens, components, providers. And I'm missing something. Services. Services. And we're not going to necessarily have a utils folder for each of these things. I do have utils in core, but that's probably all, that might just be the only place. So what I can do now, because these are just empty folders, we can just go into all of our new ones and just paste these folders in. Command C, Command V, everything's good. User, we don't have to do. We'll do this. Then we just, just a little bit easier than creating them a bunch of times. So you'll see inside post now we have post, or we have all the things, events, cool. Okay, so what I want to do now is let's just make some temporary screens for all these things. So screen, we'll just call this event. I'll just call it like root event, root screen. Is that what I want to do? Sure. And let's just make a stateless widget called event root screen. And we're going to return, this is a screen, so we're going to return a scaffold. And our scaffold, let's just have an app bar, title, text, and we'll just say events. And that's enough for us to make sure this works. So I'm going to copy that. And we're also going to do the same for, we don't care about auth, but for post screens, we're going to make a new file called post root screen.dart. And we're just going to rename the word event. So I can actually just take just event, Command D, and go post. And everything is cool. Post root screen. What else do we have? User. So let's actually make that one. New folder. Screens. New file. User. Let's actually call this one profile root screen. And we'll just go profile, and we can just do singular because it's going to be, in fact, it's going to say something like my profile. So let's do that. Then we have venue, screens, new file called venue root screen.dart, and we'll do the exact same thing. Venue. Okay. Let's save everything, close some tabs. And we are now going to actually set up our router to work with this. So what I like to do, just to keep everything really compartmentalized, is in the ones where we have these sort of like what are called shells, so post, the ones we just made, right? We're going to put right in that folder something called post routes.dart. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is make a class called post routes. This is a way I like to do it just to keep things simple. You don't have to do it this way. You can follow the way it's done in Go Router where you have all your routes in one file, but I like to kind of keep the features have their own routes, and that's what we're basically going to do right now. We're going to have a couple things on here. For instance, we're going to have a string called namespace I like to use, and this is essentially like this tab of our app is going to have, in its route, it's always going to start with post, for instance. However, I like the idea feed kind of makes sense because users will see this, right? This is going to be in the URL bar, at least if they're on web, and let's let them see the word feed. And we can at any point change that because the idea here is we're going to access this outside and use it, and then everyone will, if we change it in one spot, everything will get the change. That's dry programming. Do not repeat yourself. Then we need to make something called a shell navigator key. And this is going to be a global key, so kind of like when we were doing forms, but instead of being a form state, it's going to be a navigator state. And that's all we need, but it's sometimes also nice to give it a debug label, so we can actually say like post shell, so that when we're getting errors in the console, it can say, you know, what one it was and not just a random sort of thing. Just a little pro tip. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create what's called our branch. And our branch is basically going to be kind of like what we did in our routes here, in our app router, where we're going to have like a whole bunch of routes and stuff like that, but they're going to be within this shell. So here we'll have static, and it is of type stateful shell branch, and we're just going to call it branch. Okay, and this is just my own convention. Again, this isn't anything in the docs. This is just going to let us keep things really clean. You can call them whatever you want. So this will be a stateful shell branch. And here first of all, we're going to do routes, but the first thing I like to put in is the navigator key. And we're going to basically use this navigator key that we already constructed. Then the next thing is routes. And here, we're going to put all the routes that are relevant to this shell. So for this, it's going to be very similar. We're going to have a go route, okay, path. We're going to make its path this is like the first route in it. We want to essentially use whatever it's, the post root screen. We want to use essentially its path. For this, we will, actually in this case, I think I might have to, it's either a /, it might just be empty string, because it's going to be using this plus this. So let's just do an empty string for now. And for its builder, again, we get context, and we do have access to the state, but we don't need it, so I'll use an underscore. In theory, I can use an underscore for both of these, I guess. Let's just do that. Underscore and then double underscore, just to make it different. And here we'll use the post root screen is what actually gets returned here. And the idea is you would put more routes here, more, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we have that. Cool. We need to kind of do the same for all these different guys. We have it for post routes. We're going to have it for the venue routes, all that kind of stuff. So I'll just pause my recording because we're not going to do anything new. We're just going to make this really tedious, and I want to keep this video a bit shorter. So stand by. All right, so I've just gone through and created all these. They follow the same thing. The one difference I did realize, I want to use the namespace as the route. We weren't using this for anything. And then the idea would be like a second one would use the namespace followed by another parameter and so on and so forth. So this is all good and fine for now. So now what we need to do is, and this is maybe a good place to make a new feature that we're going to call, we're going to make a new feature called navigation. It's not going to follow our normal feature sort of thing, because it's not going to have like models or anything like that. But actually, we're going to move the router to navigation. Kind of makes sense. So we'll just move that there, and hopefully everything auto imports and changes and everything's good, which it looks like it did. Now inside here, we're going to make just something called dashboard.dart. And to me, the dashboard is kind of like the main container of our app. You could call it like root container, you could call it whatever you want. But I just like the word dashboard. So here we're going to, this will be, at least for now, we can just make it, I think, a stateless widget. And we'll just call it dashboard. We could call it app container. Maybe that's a better move, especially because we're going to allow people to come in here. So let's actually rename this just app container. There we go. We'll call it app container. New name. And let's just worry about mobile right now. So for this, we are going to essentially return a column. And what we want to do is actually get access to the navigation shell that Go router allows us to have. So we need to actually make a final stateful navigation shell. Yeah, and we'll just call it navigation shell. And we're going to require this to be passed in when this is constructed. This .navigation shell. Okay. Now, in here, we're going to have a column, and its children, we're going to start by putting in the navigation shell. Now, we're going to make this expanded because we want this to take up as much space as possible. So I'll wrap it in expanded. And then underneath it is where we're going to essentially have our buttons. To do this, we can use, there's a few ways to do it, but we can use like a navigation bar, toolbar or bar, just bar. And for our destinations, we can pass in all of our different routes essentially that we want to. So first of all, we can have a navigation destination. We construct it. We can give it an icon. I'm just going to use like icons.star for now, and then give it a label. And this would be, our first one was like feed. Okay. So we'll just have something like that, and then we'll do the same. We want 1, 2, 3. I'm just going about 4 right now because create's going to work a little bit differently. So it was feed, explore. What were the other ones? We have events, and we have profile. So we're going to have that sort of stuff there, navigation bar, and we should be good. Let's just get rid of that import that happened. And now, in order to actually make this work, we need to actually go back to our app router. And so we have the route for login screen. That's good and fine. And we might put that in its own like little module or something at some point. But most importantly is we need to, after our basic routes that we could call them, we're going to have a stateful shell route. And here we're going to pass in some branches. This is a list. And in order to get these branches, we're going to take basically those files we made just a few minutes ago in the right order. So it was feed, or we called it post route stop branch. And that's why we have this like access to this branch here as a static thing. So we can just go post route stop branch. And then we'll do the same sort of thing for our other 4. So it was post routes, it was explore routes, or actually it was venue. Yeah, venue routes. That's what we're calling it. We had, what's the other one? Events route, dot branch, and user routes. Is that what it was? Yeah, user routes, dot branch. So now we have that. And then we have a container builder. Oh, I missed one thing here. We actually want to use a stateful shell route dot indexed stack, which is actually now going to change what this is. And in here, we actually have a builder. So let's put our builder in. Builder has some parameters. It has context, our build context. We have state, just like we did before. And we actually have the navigation shell. And we'll see the navigation shell is of type stateful navigation shell, which is what we're putting here. Therefore, what are we going to return from this? Well, easy enough. We're going to return our app container while passing in that navigation shell. All right. Now for our initial route, need to remember the best way to do this, but let's actually just see what happens with this. We're probably going to have some errors for sure. Let's go back to here. So let's make our initial route actually the post routes, or actually, yeah, post routes.namespace, because that is the same route. We might refactor that and make it better, but oops, it's not a function though. So make that our initial route, and I think it worked. There we have our posts, and we have this nice tab bar down here, and if I click this, nothing happens, but it will. We'll get there. So we're sending back stuff based on that kind of thing, and we have this nice container. And this again is because we have the expanded navigation shell, whatever's in the shell, and then we have these guys right here. What we need to do now in our navigation bar, aside from just putting in destinations, we actually need to say like what to do when they're clicked. So we can go selected index, and here we'll use just the navigation shell dot current index. Because we have multiple indexes. Basically, if I recall correctly, this is our entire shell, and within it, there'll be an index on it that changes based on what we're about to do right now. So we want to make sure that index, and then we want to do something where on destination selected. And in here, we're going to get the index, which you'll see this is just an integer. And we want to just essentially take our navigation shell that we have access to and do something called go branch. So we want to go to a specific branch at that. And I think that's all. I think that's all we have to do. There's a second parameter, I think, right? Okay. Oh yes. So now look at this. We're going through. Now something else we're going to add, and I won't be able to show this until we have some deeper routes, but there's a second parameter we can actually put in here that is whether to go to the initial location. By default, it's false, and that's generally what we want. We don't want people to go here and be brought back to the top of the stack. We want them to stay where they are. But usually in a tab bar UX, if you tap it twice, so if I'm already on here and I tap again, it brings you all the way back. So we can dynamically pass a value in here of either true or false. And to do that, we can just check if index is equal to whatever the navigation shell.current index is. Too many positional arguments. Oh, it's not a positional argument. It is actually a initial location. There we go. So whenever the index is equal to that, we're actually going to say, yeah, you know what, go back to the start. So that means if I'm, on here and I go here and I go a bunch of things deep and I click it again, it's going to bring me, back to the start versus just coming back here. I'll be wherever I left off. So that's just a nice little thing to do. Perfect. 40 minutes. All right, I think that's a good length. So there we have routing. We have a tab bar. We have, the start of an app, in my opinion. We actually have something we can start working with. Super exciting. Thanks for watching. Again, like, subscribe, come join my membership if you are interested. You can see the source code. You can ask me questions. There's going to be a lot of more cool things in there. We have custom emojis. It's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that you came and you're this far along, and we'll see you guys in the next one.